I'm black.
Yeah.
So every word that comes out of my mouth is me talking.
Yeah, but
so I'm talking black.
But you're not talking black because you don't sound black while you're talking.
That's my point. And I'm offended by that. What do you mean I don't sound black? I'm black, so I sound just as black as you do.
Oh, I'm black and I'm proud. I'm black, they can't keep me down.
After the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with second sight in this American world, a world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at one's self through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. The history of the American Negro is the history of this strife, this longing to attain self-conscious manhood, to merge his double self into a better and truer self. In this merging he wishes neither of the older selves to be lost. He would not Africanize America, for America has too much to teach the world and Africa. He would not bleach his Negro soul in a flood of white Americanism, for he knows that Negro blood has a message for the world. He simply wishes to make it possible for a man to be both a Negro and an American, without being cursed and spit upon by his fellows, without having the doors of opportunity closed roughly in his face. This, then, is the end of his striving.
This description of a multifaceted identity found in W.E.B. Du Bois's 1903 book, The Souls of Black Folk, is generally considered the starting point for conversations about the history of African American code switching. For a more modern definition,
now, people often define code switching as the change in linguistics, but to me, it's more than that. It's the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you present yourself in certain situations.
the first case to put African American English on the dominant cultural map was a case out of Ann Arbor, Michigan in 1979. 3 African American parents sued the school system for failing to help their children learn to effectively code switch, saying that African American English was a distinct dialect from Standard American English, and that the school's failure to accommodate these students' home language was a violation of their right to an equal education. The district court ruled that the schools needed to make accommodations for these students. This case helped to establish African American English as a legitimate language in the view of the mainstream, and led to research on the dialect really getting underway. The next big case came out of Oakland, California. In 1996, the Oakland School District proposed to treat Black English as a separate language from Standard American English, in the hope of getting funding for bridge programs. Many saw the attempt to separate African American English from Standard American English as a marginalization of African American English speakers, with Maya Angelou expressing concerns that it would, quote, encourage young men and women not to learn Standard English, while others thought that teaching African American English in schools was, quote, teaching kids to speak garbage, according to Reverend Jesse Jackson. Eventually, the words were switched back to calling African American English a dialect, and the bridge programs were installed. But the cultural backlash revealed a deep rejection of African American English as a legitimate language in the U.S. The narrative that African American English is just slang language discounts the many Africanisms that permeate the dialect that would indicate the evolution of the language coming from a deeper attempt by African Americans to maintain some semblance of the languages that were forced from them during the era of chattel slavery.
I code switch every single day, from going to work, being with your friends and family. You got to go home and just be regular, be yourself, and you got to go to work and just be, hi, I'm going to help you, and all that stuff. So I've pretty much been code switching ever since I started school, actually, because you have to portray a different persona in front of every different person or every different race that you may see, unfortunately. And while they may not say that, you already know the vibe and you already know you got to switch up. So
I don't think I really had to code switch. I mean, when I was in 5th and 6th grade, I went to a predominantly white school, and I think I was so young that I didn't care what they thought of me, so I kind of just spoke how I wanted to speak and just did me. But there was one instance where my friend was getting bullied, and she was like, she just wasn't white, and this other girl was white, and she tried to bully her, and so I stood up for my friend, and ultimately I got painted. This is like the mean little black girl, and the girl tried to act like I wanted to like fight her or whatever. So I guess in that situation, I don't want to say that I should have code switched, but if I would have code switched, the stereotype wouldn't have been placed on me. So yeah. And then there's another instance where like at my last job, it was like a lot of white people working there, but I kind of just did me, you know, I did my job, so they really couldn't discriminate against me or anything. But there's one instance where I didn't speak proper English, and this one white man was like, good luck getting a job speaking like that, and I just kind of like, what is that supposed to mean? But I let it go because I was at work.
Have I ever had to code switch? Yeah, there are like so many times in my life where I feel like I had no choice but to code switch. You know, in school, at work and everything. I remember when I first started working at my job, people didn't seem to like, you know, understand me properly because they were saying that, oh, your accent is a little too thick or something like that. So I had to like find ways to like talk properly. You know, even in school and everything, people just didn't take it easily. They can like, you know, understand me very well, if that makes sense. So I had to like learn to like talk properly and speak the way that it's supposed to be, that you're supposed to speak in public with other people as well. And there's sometimes I'll be like, I'll go to the store with my mom or with my mom and my family, and we switch our languages all the time, which is nice because sometimes my mom would want to tell me something, but she doesn't want people around me to know what's going on. And then we switch from speaking like the proper English to like our pidgin or our languages and everything, which is fine. And you know, sometimes I notice that when I'm talking with other people around me, they do tend to like give me stares, and I'm just like, why are they staring at me? It's my language and everything. And it's not just me. I've met other friends of mine too, my friends, my family, my cousins, where we're together. People just like, you know, we over here like have this typical, we have to have this typical like English speaking that we have to speak, you know. I remember there was like one time in high school that I said a word. I don't remember what word it was, but like I pronounced this word a different way, and then this one kid came up to me and said, "You're pronouncing it wrong. That's not how you say it in English. You're supposed to say it this way." And I was like, first of all, I from a different country, and we're colonized by the British, and the way I speak is the way the British speak. So I'm actually correct, but in a whole different way. The same goes for when I spell some other words like favor and honor. I always put O-U-R, but some people say that, oh, that's wrong, it's supposed to be O-R, but that's just the way I've been brought up, and that's just the way I've always, you know, known these words and always known how to speak these words. But for some reason, some people just don't see it as right, they see it as wrong.
I can't think of a time that I had to code switch, but I could think of some reasons why people would code switch.
Survival.
Security.
Code switching often has higher stakes for Black people.
I think it's clear why Black people specifically feel the need to code switch.
This is Taryn Finley. She's the editor of HuffPost Black Voices.
Our Blackness isn't accepted in a lot of spaces that are critical for our success and our survival. A lot of times we have to dilute and we have to put on a mask.
It's a bigger leap for someone who speaks African American English versus someone who speaks a language that is closer to mainstream English, the language of those in power.
But when a Black person can't effectively code switch, the result can be catastrophic. The 2013 George Zimmerman trial was a painful reminder of that fact. He was charged with second-degree murder in the shooting of Trayvon Martin. Rachel Gentile was the prosecution's star witness and a close friend of Martin's.
And when she testified, she was not code switching.
I asked him how the man looked like. He looked like a creepy ass cracker.
She took the stand, and it became clear that the public wasn't judging the facts of her story. They were judging her language.
I don't think she came across as brutally honest. I think she comes across as brutally ignorant. Every time she opens her mouth, her credibility gets chipped away and chipped away.
Ultimately, Zimmerman walked free. But the ability to code switch isn't always enough to avoid disaster. Case in point, Sandra Bland. Bland was stopped for failing to signal a lane change.
Oh, you seem very irritated.
I am. I really am.
She's speaking a form of standard or mainstream English.
Step out of the car.
But yet, the conversation escalates and goes badly very quickly.
Drag me out of my own car.
Get out of the car!
And then you
I will light you up. Get out!
Wow.
Now!
Wow.
Get out of the car!
For a failure to signal. You're doing all of this for
Get over there.
And so here what I think is happening, and what we seem to understand, is that there's something about the Black expression that is different or can be misconstrued.
Despite her ability to code switch, Bland was arrested. She was later found dead in her jail cell.
Our Blackness inherently says trouble in a lot of white spaces and a lot of public spaces. That's why so many people feel threatened and want to call the cops when they see a Black person doing something as benign as waiting for a business meeting to start in Starbucks.
So it sounds like racism is the root cause of all of this.
We haven't, as a country, confronted racism and really got into the roots of why we code switch, why we feel like we have to straighten our hair in order to get a job, even if we don't want to.
That concerns me, because I think the Black body is like every other body, a beautiful body, and should be loved and respected, and not feel anxiety as you walk through the world on a daily basis. I know I feel that anxiety, because I do want to be accepted by the world in which I live.
Code switching can help Black people navigate white spaces. But at the end of the day, it's not enough to overcome racism.
Code switching and respectability politics don't protect us all the time. We're still Black.
Code switching affects Black people in that, to me personally, it takes a piece of who you are every time you have to do it. Because you don't get to be yourself necessarily. You feel as though yourself is not good enough. You feel as though you have to portray somebody entirely different in order to get farther in life, which is probably the most self-degrading thing that I could possibly think of. Unfortunately, today that is necessarily what we have to do. But I also believe that, you know, it's also kind of a learning thing, and it also kind of teaches you how to play both sides of the field. Because I don't know if anybody else has been told this, but you have to work 10 times harder to do the same thing that they have to do a lot of times. So, yeah.
I think it affects Black people because some people may be like insecure and you feel like you have to act a certain way or dress a certain way to get to a successful point in your career or even in your education. I think it also creates tension in the Black community because some people may feel like they're better than or even less than if you don't code switch, but you feel better than because you may be around more successful people of other different races and things like that.
I think that code switching affects Black people in numerous ways. It could be good, it could be bad, but like, when, for example, a Black person trying to go get a job or something, if they go over when they go over for their job interview, people tend like you gotta speak, the proper hi, my name is this, my name is that. But some people may, where they grow up in, they're used to the slangs and the way that they speak and everything. So if they can't speak the proper English that people want them to speak or the proper language that they want them to speak, it affects them because they're gonna overlook them than the person and the other person who can speak better than them, and that's not right. But society sees it that way, and when they go out and they're going out to stores or different places, when you're around your own family, and when the Black person is around their own family, they speak what their family is used to, what they understand they were speaking. So there were some people in stores, they see it as, oh, you're being loud, you're being razz, you're being, extra. But it's just all love. Like when I'm with my mom, and we're together in stores, or we're going out anywhere, she's always like, when you're with me, speak in your regular Nigerian accent, which I do because my mom is like, she believes that she's not gonna change herself for anybody, that she's not gonna change her accent, because she's like, that's the way I speak, that's the way I am. And she has a difficult wishes at work. People literally overlook that because they're always like, oh, she can't speak because of her accent. But my mother has a degree. She went to school. She can speak properly. She just has an accent. But they just see it as, oh no, like, you can't speak, don't you understand English and all? But my mother, we understand what you're saying, but they find it hard for them to understand what we're saying, which isn't right. So I feel like it's a negative, and it's a negative and a positive thing as well. Like, I don't see why it is such a hoorah thing when they hear a black person who can speak proper English, like, oh my gosh, you can speak well, or an African person who can speak proper English. I don't see why it's such a hoorah. We do have education. We do have schools. There's education everywhere. Like, just people just don't have the opportunity to, have that experience. So that's just my opinion.
Perhaps I should start this poem by informing you that I am bilingual. That the Queen's English that I speak so eloquently before you now is not my first language, no. My grandmother never used such diction when she spoke me up in the welfare line amongst the other dwellers. Or when she called down to me from the project window for dinner, no, we spoke a more southern fried English. This rhetorical recipe has been in my family for generations, Grandma said. Big Mama hid it under her tongue because she had it for northern cities doing a great migration. Scholars call it African-American vernacular English, but my guys, they call it slang. The man called it Ebonics. I call it America's Creole. The last remaining squad birthed from a European and African pidgin turned into the dialect of the doughboys, the base that appears in a rapper's rhythmic rhetoric spoken everywhere from the trap house to the liquor store, from the HIV testing clinic to the bus stop. Ebonics is the official language of the undefined black culture, the native tongue to the underrepresented black American. And long before I received liberal art degrees and stood unappointed in academic settings, I was born on the south side of Chicago and managed to garner up enough street cred from the School of Hard Knocks to qualify me to teach you all a few of my languages essentials. So hipsters, I hope you have your notepads ready. This is Ebonics 101. Chapter 1. Any English word that holds an I-N combination where the I becomes an A. Like Billie Holiday couldn't sing, that girl could sing. If Martin did all that walking, I wonder if him feet stank, traveled all them miles just to hear freedom rang. I wonder what he was thinking. Chapter 2. Any English word that holds an O-R combination, the R sound becomes silent. Like Emmett screaming, don't beat me no more. Like Rodney screaming, don't beat me no more. Like Trayvon asking, what is you following me for? Chapter 3. Any English word that holds an ER combination where the ER becomes an A. Like in the great quote from the linguistic scholar, Miss Lauryn Hill. And even after all my logic and my theory, I add a motherfucker so you ignorant niggas hear me. See, there's culture in these words. The bended back of my speech comes from years of carrying the black experience. The verbal diaspora of Africa shakes my spine. We cross our T's with the middle passage, dot our I's with strange fruits, curve our S's with mid-Atlantic roots. You cannot expect us to be slaves to your phonetics forever. And just like our history, we will defy the structure of your Jim Crow grammar. Refuse to speak within the lines of your Mason-Dixon diction. You cannot correct this. Context this, connotate my accomplishments, see me be black, male, use double negative to make positive. He will write until the black story no longer subsists. He will write until a clenched fist is synonymous with a clenched fist. He will write until the black male is able to live, be, exist. Class dismissed.
Verbally abuse me when your mind is the one that needs to be free. You, black man, too quick to call me a nigger. Well, fancy that, my brother, go figure. You're the one that's using the white man's label. Ironically, you're the overseer that enables Mr. Charlie to continue to divide our race. But now you are oblivious to the shame and disgrace. You are dancing to the tune that many white men sing, like a mindless dummy, like a puppet on a string. You even let the man steal your religion. Why do you base your spiritual decisions on misguided perceptions about the white race? The goal is to teach all men to be brothers. You call me a nigger, you self-proclaimed progressive mind, but you are really the one that needs to free your mind.